And what happens is I get a whole lot of words crossing my screen for a few minutes, and it takes me a minute to get rid of it all. I don't work for Teams. I don't work for Microsoft. I just stumble through their equipment a lot. I'm just a homeschool mom, and I like paper and pencil, but I'm learning to use computers. This is good. All right. So how's everyone doing in February? Everybody love February? It's kind of now, if you like snow and you like sledding, we've had a good winter for it, but most people look out. I've got Blackacre behind me here. Most people look out and they feel kind of, it's kind of gray and dreary and everything looks dead. Right now, it's just muddy and cold. So I've heard a lot of people refer to this as the winter doldrums. And if you're not, it's not uncommon for people to feel kind of down in the dumps this time of year. I personally, I have to kind of drag myself out of bed in February. But in the past few years, I've been kind of changing my perspective on this. And when I think about the way God kind of designed the work week, he intentionally made it so that there is a Sabbath day, to have a day of rest so that we can rejuvenate the rest of the work week. But he has kind of done the same thing with the seasons as well. So we had a great flurry of activity, October, November, December, all the holidays and everything. And then all of a sudden, it seems like things just sort of stop in January. Well, and then February, everything's kind of calm. There's nothing going on outside. I don't have to mow my lawn. I don't have to rake my leaves. I don't have to weed the garden. I don't even have to brush cobwebs off. So it is sort of a season where we do have a chance to slow down, rest a little bit, maybe sit on the couch with some books and our kids, a little bit longer. We can sleep more. We're more inclined to sleep because of the long nights and everything. But a lot of the stores are pushing us into as quick as possible to buy a bunch of flower decorations and spring stuff because we're all eager for April and May and June. But we really couldn't have that if it wasn't for the rest of January. And then what happens in late February and early March is very important in nature. So I didn't know this way back, but what happens right now in February is all these, the spring bulbs, the seeds, the trees are all starting to send down their roots deeper. You can't see it happening above the surface, but there's a lot of different processes that are going on in plants right now that are preparing for the busy activity to come. And in the same way, February can be a kind of dreary time, but it can also be a time where we are preparing and looking for the future. Because eventually, like we could not have the harvest that we have in August, September, October if it wasn't for this important period in February and March. And so in that same way, we want to start preparing now for the August activities of getting started with our challenge program. So I'm glad everyone's here today for Challenge 1. And we're going to run through some quick introductions. I'm just going to call on you guys, so if you could be ready. We don't have too many people on this call. When we've had 22, doing introductions gets a little hairy, but we should be okay today. So if you could just tell me how many years you've been homeschooling, the number of years in CC, or if you're just checking out CC, what location you're calling from, and then what brings you on the call today. So Stephanie, I think you were my first one on the call. Do you want to start off?
Yeah, I can. I like to say we've been homeschooling since they were born. Our
Yes.
oldest was born in 2011,
Okay.
and our youngest was born in 2016. We joined CC in 2016. We've had to do a couple years at home
Mm-hmm.
due to life.
Yep.
But our oldest is going into Challenge 1 in the fall. Hard to believe she's old enough for that. We are part of the Hopkinsville community,
Oh, with Kenna?
in in
Yep.
Southwest
Okay.
Kentucky. And
Awesome.
bring me on the call today. Just our eldest is going into Challenge 1. And so I always try to find out as much information about any new level as they're
Mm-hmm.
getting into them.
Yep.
So
That's the plan now. Awesome. Well, thank you. All right. I have Tonya. Is it Tanya or Tonya?
Tanya, it's whatever. I answer to all things. Um, we've been homeschooling. This is our 10th year. We've been in CC for all of those years. I guess. And I live in Louisville, and I am the Challenge One director for Hikes Point Tuesday next year.
Oh, awesome. Okay, so you'll be following up. So do you know Heidi then?
Yes,
Okay, awesome. So, all right, sounds like you're in good company. All right, and so is it Tonya or Tanya?
Tanya.
Tanya? Okay, because I've seen people with it spelled Tanya. And then anyway, so I always and with my name, Krista, I answer to everything too. Christina, Crystal, I know what it's like. So you're just like I answer to anything. So. All right, Natalie, do you want to go next?
Hi, I am Natalie Dewberry. We have 4 children, and we've been homeschooling for 10 years. And we've been in CC since 2019. My oldest is going into Challenge 1 this coming academic year, and I just jumped on to see what's going on.
All right. Good to have you. You joined during COVID. Fun. We're not so
Yeah, it was our last part of the spring semester was a little crazy. We were doing it over Zoom and doing egg drops at home, and it was fun.
Oh my goodness.
Then the next year I went into tutor, and I'm like, I don't know how this is supposed to go. Like, I didn't get my last 6 weeks. Like, what does this look like?
Oh yeah. So you know the pain of tech. You know how difficult that is.
Yes.
Yeah, trial by fire for you. So.
Exactly.
Well, I'm glad you stuck it out. So.
Oh yes, and I'm at Hopkinsville North. I'm the FE director.
Okay, cool. Well, good to have you. All right.
Yes.
So who is next? Looks like we have Jen. We have Jen Birch. Or if you're having trouble unmuting, Lisa.
I'm Lisa, and Lisa Wallace. I have 4 girls, and this is my 9th year with CC. So we've been kind of doing CC since the beginning, since my oldest was 5, and now she's going into Challenge 1. So I'm directing Challenge A this year at the Lexington Wednesday campus with Jamie Riggs.
Yeah, Jamie, she's awesome. So.
Yeah.
All right.
This is Jen Birch. I got my microphone.
Oh, okay,
cool. I was pressing the wrong button. I've been homeschooling for 12 years with Classical Conversations. We're in Louisville at the South Community.
Okay.
And
is that Preston?
Right now,
not Preston.
It is. Preston meets on Thursday, and we're on Tuesdays.
Oh, okay. Okay. Awesome. I haven't been out to that campus yet, so I need to come out and do a campus visit that way.
Yeah, it's both of them are at Farmdale on Tuesdays and Thursdays. I currently tutor or direct the Challenge B, and I'm not sure if I'm moving up to 1 or 3 next year. We're trying to figure all that out. My eldest is in 3, so I have done 1 before, but I definitely just want a refresher for my second born coming up.
Yep. Okay, sounds good. All right, good to have you. All right, I have Sandra, and then Erin, you'll be next.
Hi, I'm Sandra Palmer. I am in the LaGrange community. I'm the Challenge 1 director, I think. That's going to be depending on how many we're able to get. But I'm excited and looking forward to it. This is my 8th year homeschooling, but I agree with the lady who went first and said we've been homeschooling since the beginning, since birth. But I have 2 boys, Samuel and Isaiah. Samuel will be going into Challenge 1 next year, and Isaiah is doing his first essentials year. So it's all new going into Challenge 1. And yeah, I'm just excited to see what we have in store.
Cool. Now, are you on the Tuesday or the Thursday?
The Thursday.
Thursday.
Yeah,
okay.
There
Mhm.
won't be a challenge 1 on Tuesdays. That's my
Okay.
understanding,
Oh,
but
that's right. Your larger day is Thursday at that campus. It's kind
Thursday.
of switched from what I usually see. Okay, because I think
Yeah.
you have a Jen Hilger, I think that's going to be coming to your campus to direct challenge A, and she's a friend of mine. So,
Oh, okay.
right. So if
Nice.
you rub shoulders with her, we're friends. So we were at a
Okay.
community together a few years back. So
Nice. Yeah, we try to mingle with Tuesday as much as we can, but I think because they've grown quite a
Mhm.
bit, it's a little bit harder. But
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I hear you. Well, it's a good kind of problem to have, right? So,
Yeah.
all right, Erin, looks like you're up. And then we'll have Lindsay and then Michelle.
Hi, this is Erin. I have 3 kiddos. My oldest is my only boy, and he will be going into Challenge 1 next year. We've been doing CC since the beginning, so I think this is our 9th year, I think, if my math is right. And yeah, so I just would like to kind of see what's coming down the road for us. I have not tutored that entire time or directed anything until this semester is my first time tutoring at the foundations level. So
Okay, awesome. Fun. So are you doing that now or coming up you're going to be tutoring?
I started mid-year. One of
Oh,
our tutors had to step away for some medical reason. So
gotcha.
yeah, so just
Yeah.
half of a year here, dove in the middle. So, but
Yeah.
of course we've been doing this so long, we've been
Yeah.
through these cycles before, so it's
Yeah.
felt pretty
Yeah.
natural.
Cool. Good. Well, thanks for doing that. So, all right. And then see Lindsay and then Michelle.
Hey, my name is Lindsay Flanders. This is our 5th year homeschooling, always in CC. My oldest is in Challenge B right now, and I'm directing, and I do plan on moving up with him to direct Challenge 1. We are at, we live in Bowling Green, but we're at the Oakland campus that started this year. And I'm just here to start getting my mind on what we're going to need Challenge 1 and just starting to prepare for that next step.
Yep. Okay. All right. Well, I'll be coming out to Bowling Green. Do you have you said you had little ones?
I have one that's in Fashion Essentials.
Okay. Well, we will be going out to Bowling Green. Troy asked me, do you know Troy?
Oh yeah. Uh-huh.
Yeah. So, yeah, he asked me to come out to do that math map thing. So maybe I'll meet you there.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
All right. Okay, Michelle, were you the one that was having trouble with the slides? Did they start working?
Yes, my computer's been acting weird, so I
Okay.
went back in. It's fine now.
It's good? Okay, good.
Yeah.
I never know whether the problem's on my end or the other person's end. So it gets me like, I'm so sorry. I'd like to help, but I don't know what to do.
No,
So,
it's okay. I've been homeschooling for 9 years, but 7 years in CC.
okay.
I live in Bowling Green, Kentucky, and we're on
Okay.
the Thursdays campus.
Mhm.
And right now, my son is in Challenge B. We're going to go into Challenge 1, so I want to see what's coming.
All right. Well, hopefully we can help you. So, all right. Well, I'm going to do a quick intro. Oh, and then if anybody, especially directors, because I like to put directors on the spot, if anybody would be ready to pray in just a little bit, I'll do my quick introduction and then we'll do a quick prayer and then get started. Okay. So I am Krista Bottomley. That's about as good of a picture as you can get out of me. So I have been homeschooling, I guess you'd say for 22 years because my oldest is 22. I love the answer. We've been homeschooling from birth because to me, that's when I like to start counting. So, but we were doing classical education at the beginning on my own, but we didn't find CC until it'd be 2013. So it's been, I guess, 13, almost 14 years that we've been in CC. I've directed foundations and essentials. I've tutored both foundations and essentials separately. I've directed a couple of the challenge levels. But my heart is really in book repping, and I really love getting to know people's needs and their perspectives. I love kind of filling the gap sometimes between CC corporate and the end user, because it's a little bit more of a direct channel. It doesn't filter out through so much. And I love traveling the state and meeting all the people and just kind of connecting people with what their needs are and what CC might do to kind of help resolve their, their needs. So these are my kids. That's my oldest. That's Reagan. She is 22 and she is out at a classical university out in Annapolis, Maryland called St. John's College. And she's doing very well out there. And she's leaning on top of my youngest, who is 7 years old. So, and then I have two boys in the middle. I have a 13-year-old in Challenge A, and then I have a third-year Essentials. His name is Ransom in the blue there. And so between all of us, when I first started book repping, Reagan was Ransom's age, and we had the big box truck that we would drive around to the practicums, and it was a very physical job, and you actually had physical products. And so this is and then I had to take a break from book repping for a few years, and now that I've come back, everything's very techy. I'm not hauling around books as much anymore, so it's a little different, but still get to talk to people, and I enjoy that. So, and then, yeah, so we've been at a number of different levels. So hopefully that can help me kind of keep it's easy when your oldest gets older to kind of lose touch with reality about how hard it was when you had little ones. But frankly, Frederick has kept me very kind of down to earth and sober about, no, it is work. So at the younger levels. So that's me. Heidi, do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Sure, that'd be lovely. So my name is Heidi Hall, and currently I am Challenge 1 director at Hikes Point on Tuesdays, and I've also stepped into the second semester of Challenge B at Hikes Point on Thursdays. We've been homeschooling for 9 years. My oldest started out in public school, and we ended up homeschooling, and God has grown me into, I am thrown into this is a calling. And this is our third year with Classical Conversations. The first year was just my middle child. And then the second year was all three of them. So I started out with just foundations, and then I quickly went from just foundations to 2 in foundations, 1 in essentials, and 1 in challenge. And that was a big difference. And then about halfway through the year, one of you all mentioned that someone had a health issue and you had to step in halfway. That's what happened to me last year with Challenge B with my oldest. And then it was kind of like, okay, you're there. Okay, you're going to Challenge 1, right? Yeah. You're going to Challenge 2, right? Yeah. So I'm doing Challenge 2 this coming year as well. Like I said, we are at Hikes Point, so we are split between the 2 campuses, but we have absolutely enjoyed getting to know all of the different people at the 2 campuses. I remember one of you all mentioned trying to get together with the other campus, and I totally feel that it can be difficult to be split between the 2 campuses and trying to maintain those relationships. So I definitely resonated with that comment that you said.
Okay, and then she's going to walk us through the program in a little bit, but we're going to start off, I'm just going to cover our meeting agenda. So we did the greeting and introductions. We're just a little bit behind, but we'll try to pick up speed here so that we can leave enough time for our parents' questions and so that you guys can go and get your dinners ready for your kids. So we're going to do about 5-10 minutes doing a classical model refresher, and then Heidi's going to walk us through the Challenge 1 program. I'm going to try to be kind of quick on talking about the materials and resources, because for Challenge 1, I feel like it's kind of straightforward at this level. And then we can have a time for question and answer. Does anybody feel like praying for us as we get started?
I'd be happy to pray for us, Krista.
Oh, thank you, Heidi.
Lord, thank you so much for allowing all of us to come together to just discuss what it is that you would have for our future, for our kids, for ourselves, and just kind of get our minds wrapped around it. Please be with us as we discuss this and as we ask our questions and give our answers so that we are concise and very clear in what it is that we're asking, as well as the answers that we're giving, Lord. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. All right, we have a lot of veterans on this call, so this going through the classical model part won't take too terribly long. I'll kind of clip through it. And the reason why we do this, even though, yes, I know we've all been in the program for a while, but it is good for us to hear this over and over again. And when we run into people on the street, we need to explain what we're doing. It is good if we've heard it more than one way. It's also good for me to repeat saying it. And it's part of the classical model is repetition. So, all right, so if we start off looking at what modern education is, what most of us were familiar with or raised with, modern education says that man is the measure of all things, which is the essence of humanism. And so they place the student at the center of his own world, as if he's his own little demigod, and all these subjects swirl around him as isolated little pockets. And subjects are studied as utilitarian things to be harnessed and used for his own purposes, usually vocationally in order to get a job. Now, poor Christian education really just it doesn't improve much on this model. It basically just tacks on some Bible studies, or maybe put some Bible verses in some of the programs. Maybe there's prayer before class, but it really hasn't done much to improve the overall paradigm of education. Now, if you get a good Christian education, they rightfully take the student out of the center and they put God in the middle and say that since God created our universe, he is the center of all things. And that because God created everything, he has put his imprint upon each one of the subjects. Now, if you get a great Christian education, they would tell you that since God created everything and everything originates in the mind of God, so to each one of the subjects or each topic that you study should tell you something about the mind of God. You should be able to find some truth about who our creator is based on what you see in creation and in the created order of the universe. The Bible tells us that since the creation of the world, his invisible attributes are clearly seen, being understood by the things that are made. Now you get to a classical education, and that's where it changes just a little bit. So since God created a universe, not a multiverse, each subject is no longer an isolated pocket. There's a lot of interweaving and interconnecting between the subjects. And in the same way that, like in our solar system, each one of the planets orbiting around the sun, they feel the pull from the sun at the center. They also, as they pass each other, they impact each other and help kind of have a gravitational pull on one another. And in the same way, different subjects work like that as well. So, for example, the philosophy of a time period is greatly affected by what's going on in history. And the philosophy that's being developed also will have an impact upon what you see in the fine arts. The artists will, in various ways, kind of put their imprint about what is believed about man and about God into their artwork at that time. Also, science, of course, has an impact on philosophy as well. And what's going on in technological developments will have a huge impact upon history, also on economics. So as you see that you cannot really study anything in isolation. So that's where you see, most of us have seen this catechesis wheel. This has only been around for about 5-6 years in the CC catalog. It wasn't around when I originally came on the show. So you see, like, you have all the interconnected, we don't have them as subjects, we have them as strands or as skills that we're learning. But you see that they're still circling around God. They're still kind of interconnected and influencing each other. And then we'll talk about the grammar, dialectic, and rhetoric that you see going around the side. But when I first saw this, I noticed doxology up at the top, and I thought, doxology, okay, what's that doing there? That's that song that we sing in church, right? So I later on I heard that doxology actually means echoing and celebration. So at the same time, I think my daughter was in challenge 2, and or maybe it was challenge 3, where they do music theory, and she was also taking piano at the time. And she called me over to the piano at one point. She said, "Mom, check this out." And she flipped up the top of our upright piano. She said, "See what happens when I do this." And she hit the C note really hard. Of course, the hammer hit the string and it started vibrating, but not just that, but every 6 or 7 strings away, there was another string that was vibrating that she hadn't hit the key for, and 7 strings away from that, and 7 strings away from that. Each one of those strings were vibrating, and those were all the C notes, and they were all reverberating at the same time, even though she hadn't touched the piano keys on that side. And then she hit the damper pedal, muted it, and then she hit the D. Same thing happened. All the D strings vibrated across the piano. But then she hit the damper again. She brought over her violin, and she hit a really, really hard C note on the violin as I looked into the top of the piano. And even though it was a totally different instrument, those C C strings on the piano were all reverberating in kind. And in the same way, there is something about when we study a subject, and I don't know if it's like this for unbelievers, but so it might be related to the Holy Spirit. I don't know. But there is something about when we are studying a strand or a subject and we sense a little bit of God's truth in that. There is some sort of resonance in us that feels the truth and feels like we know our God, our own creator a little bit more because of that. And so when I see doxology at the top and it says echoing in celebration, that makes me think of that resonance that we feel. Now, the classical method of learning, this is so important because students who learn to think this way develop an integrated understanding of God, themselves, and the world. So class, let's see, we're going to skip that slide. All right. So the classical method of learning, I'm going to go through the general method we're all pretty familiar with. So it says that anytime you are going to learn any subject, anytime you tackle something new, whether it's a language or cooking, a new style of cooking, first you need to soak in a body of knowledge. And generally it's learning the facts, the basic information, dates, measurements, things like that. It's just the root knowledge, the basic foundational information that you need about a subject. So my boys are in Trail Life, which is like a scouting program, kind of like Boy Scouts. And they were studying knots. So when they're learning this new subject matter, first they tackle knowing all the names of the different knots that they need to know. And then they practice tying each one. They make sure that they know the name of the knot and they know how to tie it. And when we say, I need a bowline hitch, they can do that quickly. They don't know what they're doing with a bowline hitch, but they're able to whip it out quickly, and they know which one I'm talking about. Then they progress into, they grow in their understanding of what the knots do. So they say, okay, so what happens if I try these different knots in different scenarios? And they find out, okay, if I tie my shoes with a granny knot, my shoes come untied. But if I use a square knot when I tie my shoes, which is actually, there's two ways that you can tie your shoes. One's a granny knot, one's a square knot. Most people don't know the difference. I just learned this, that their shoes will stay tied as long as they're using a square knot. But if you use a square knot when you're trying to drag along a log along the ground using a rope, it'll shear that square knot off. And so you want to figure out which knot you're using. So it's about learning. They have the basic understanding, but they need to know how to apply it. And then as they start developing and as their information starts bearing fruit, they are able to teach others how to use the information that they've learned. But not only that, but they're able to use it in a practical way. So at some point, when they get a little further on in their understanding of knots, they're supposed to be sent off into the woods with just some rope and figure out whatever they find in the woods. They're supposed to be able to build some sort of fort or structure out of that using just rope. And additionally, right now, they're already, when we go camping, they're able to use the knots that they know on how to set up the tent in various ways. They've learned a lot better ways to like do our rain flies, to keep it taut, things like that. They're starting to bear fruit in wisdom in what they've learned. Okay, and we call these the grammar. Grammar is the basic knowledge. The dialectic is wrestling through understanding. And then the rhetoric is where you start bearing fruit in wisdom. Now, this same method of learning we find correlates, intentionally aligns with a child's typical developmental process. So young children like my little Frederick, he is mostly focusing on the grammar of learning right now. He's soaking up a lot of information. He is learning names, dates, facts. Now, I could stick him in front of a TV and he could learn the name of all the Paw Patrol characters or SpongeBob, or he could learn all the jingles to commercials. But instead, it's better since he's going to soak up something, might as well teach him his math facts and let him absorb the history sentence or the timeline. Now, he's not really asking a lot of questions at this point, but my older boys, they're starting to get a little into this dialectic stage where they know all these things. They've been taught this, they've memorized this, the various points of the timeline. So like they're starting to ask me things like, okay, this liberation of South America history sentence that we know, why is that happening anyway? Why did it happen all at once? Why hadn't it been going on all along? So we started asking questions about, okay, so what's been going on in other parts of the world and what's going on over here and who initiated these processes anyway? And we found out that some of the revolutionaries in South America had traveled to France and America at that time. Well, what was going on during those time periods? Well, there was the French Revolution and the American Revolution. And so they brought these ideas back to South America, and that's what started the impetus there. So they're starting to wrestle through their understanding. Now, sometimes it comes off as a little bit of sass. You can see it's called adolescence or the PERT stage. Sometimes people like to use the term teenager. We don't like that term in our family sometimes, but it's when they get a little more sassy and start wrestling. But this is a natural developmental stage that all students have, and CC wants to harness that and use it appropriately. Additionally, you'll find that, so kids as they get older, my daughter, for example, off in college right now, she's definitely fully in this poetic stage right now. Now she sees a lot of her peers at college right now. They have these like revolutionary urges right now. They either want to protest or have, they want to start expressing their ideas, sometimes very dramatically, because they've learned information and they've argued it out and learned some things. And now they want to express what they think. But if they haven't learned how to appropriately, how to properly wrestle with their thoughts and think things out clearly, they won't necessarily have good things to express or know how to express themselves clearly and logically. Unfortunately, my daughter and what they do in the later CC years is they teach them how they do poetry, they do arguments, or debates, and they learn how to express themselves appropriately. So when they go off to college and we're no longer there to tell them, answer their questions or to tell them what to think, they have good ideas of their own to express. So that goes back to the catechesis wheel. And as you can see, we've been doing, so the challenge A and B levels, we're still a little in the grammar stage, but starting to get into that dialectic. And then when you get into challenge 1, you're still learning new information, which Heidi will tell us about, but they are definitely in that dialectic wrestling stage, but they're also starting to learn, they're starting to poke their fingers a little bit at getting more expressive. So with that, Heidi, you want to go ahead and take it from here and tell us how challenge 1 integrates into all that?
Yeah, so what I really love about Challenge 1 is it really is a beautiful introduction into the high school years. Most of these kids are not working at age 14, and so they have the capability of a little bit more rigorous of a schedule. And so we see that in the books and the curriculum that is assigned for them to do week to week in both the first semester and the second semester. So that can be a little bit daunting, but the reality is their work is class right now. It is to be a student. And what's encouraging though is that as you progress into the next couple of years, it's not going to stay the same. The workload will lighten, but it is designed to help them understand freedom in a different way, because it's about being disciplined and learning how to do the work that you need to do so that you have the freedom that you would like to have. So prioritizing things and making sure that you're getting done the things that you need to get done in a timely manner. And it's a lot of learning. So if you actually have brought your catalog with you, I would love to encourage you to turn to page 58. That is where the book actually discusses Challenge 1, and it talks about each of the different strands that we learn in there. So again, that's page 58 if you are following along in a catalog. So in logic, which is what is math, they encourage you to use Saxon. Most of our students are on a totally different type of math, but what I have done is I actually bring in the math artwork and then the quotes at the bottom of the artwork and the essay. And we usually have a conversation. You use the 5 common topics in order to kind of guide us through that conversation on how we can see God truly in math. And then the kids come forward and they present a math problem that they have from their work. Some of them choose to present something that they don't know how to do, which I find beauty in that, because that's exactly what our Christian walk is when we don't understand something and we struggle with something, bringing that before others to help us. It's just a beautiful display of God in logic. We generally try to stick with the way that it's been assigned in the guide when we go through our day. So after we complete logic, we move on to grammar. Grammar is still going to be the Henley Latin. What's really interesting and cool is that you're repeating everything that you learned in Challenge A and everything you learned in Challenge B in the first semester. It's completely fine if you didn't get that Challenge A or you didn't get that Challenge B. It is a fast pace, but what we do is we try to help our kids understand that it's about that whole idea of the grammar, soaking in the knowledge, it's not necessarily meant for you to understand absolutely everything. You're just sitting right there in what's going on, in what's happening, soaking in the knowledge. And then when you are sitting there and soaking in that knowledge, you are then able to start getting to that point where you can understand what to do and how to do it. We actually have a few students this year who have never had any of the Latin. And so it's kind of a neat thing to kind of see how that aspect tempers our students who have had it and who are experts with it, and those that are struggling. So again, we see that scenario of real true Christian community, seeing God at work in that strand within our actual community day. And I do encourage them, bring something that you struggled with from the work into class, because the expectation is that they're going to struggle, and that's okay. And we need to be able to see each other at a vulnerable, in a vulnerable way, and learn how to gracefully handle that, how to deal with each other kindly and respectfully. This is going to bring us through the rest of the Henley Latin book, which will then allow you to be ready for that new book in Challenge 2. And then generally within our class, we'll go into research. Research is kind of fun. What we are doing is we're walking through that Apologias book, and we are doing a week where we discuss and a week where we're doing experiments. My students absolutely love the experiments. The discussion part has been probably the most taxing aspect. So what we did was we adjusted so that each student had something that they were going to have to present on. So it was like, hey, instead of read all this information and try to discuss all of it, because they are reading a lot anyways with all of their books, it's, read what you see, all of the things that are assigned, however it is, and then bring back something within this section that you were like, hey, this really spoke to me. Here's why it spoke to me. This is what I appreciated. This is what I found the most interesting, and bringing it that way. And it's allowed them a little bit more freedom in those conversations that we have. And then we can take, again, those 5 common topics, and we can compare them to each other. Okay, so how does what you found interesting compare to what you found interesting? How does it contrast? How does it correlate? How does it correlate to grammar? How does it correlate to logic? That is one thing that we definitely work to try to do, is see the bridge across each of the strands, which kind of goes back to that catechesis wheel, where each one of them are all interconnected, because at the center of all things is God. And so how could they not be interconnected? When we go through research, we go into reasoning. Within reasoning, this was kind of fun. Having that intermediate logic at the end of Challenge B felt like a fire hose to me, who had never directed and who had never had any experience with challenge whatsoever. And it really made sense once we got to Challenge 1 and started with traditional logic. I truly saw the idea of, here's all the knowledge, here's all the information, really focus on the vocabulary. And then in Challenge 1, you really start to dissect and learn how to handle all of those little individual things. And I understand the logic so much better having used the traditional logic, which for me has been great. Now having that Challenge B class as well this semester, it's helps me as director to encourage them, like, to not be discouraged when they don't understand something, because it's not about understanding, it's about gaining the knowledge right now. And then we switch in the second semester to drama. This has been very entertaining. The Taming of the Shrew is a really great play. It has prompted so many great discussions, and it's really brought out a different side of the kids that I don't know that they would have been capable of doing even last year, let alone the first semester, where they're actually standing and they're using hand motions and gestures and facial expressions and voices for the different characters. It's definitely very comical when our boys end up with the girl parts, because their voices are at that point where they can actually hit those high notes and make them sound like a girl. And what's cool is just to see their interaction with each other. And Shakespeare is difficult to read in the first place. The language is just different from what we understand and what we expect. And so then the conversations that we can have about language itself and about how it's adapted, how it's grown, how it's shaped differently, and how maybe what we say and what we do ourselves may look that same way to someone 50 years from now, 100 years from now, and so on. And again, it definitely kind of leads right back into the whole idea of grammar and translation. And we're really translating what is being said in these in the Shakespeare play. And so kind of walking through and saying, okay, so this is what they said. What do we think we understand that to mean right now, today, in the language that we would have? And it's no different than what we're doing in grammar. We're translating one language to another so that we have a better understanding. I truly appreciate the idea of grammar helping you understand the English language. And I think that there's a huge correlation into the reasoning, especially during the drama semester. All right, so then we come to exposition. This has been fantastic. We have read some really amazing books. There are a few director choice books, and we have enjoyed just kind of walking through and comparing them to each other. This is where we actually start doing comparison essays as well. So if you have been walking through that Lost Tools of Writing, which for me has been a huge impact, I say that every Christian should have training in the Lost Tools of Writing. The way that you read through something and you take what you may or may not know, you have that issue, you fill out your affirmative, you fill out your negative, you fill out the interesting, and then you take those 5 common topics to allow you to be able to further move those interesting items into your affirmative or your negative, and using those to inform your decision, because that's what our whole walk in Christ is using what does scripture actually say versus what it doesn't say to inform what we say, what we do. And that's exactly the practice that they're getting with these books and with the essays that they're doing. But not only that, they are truly learning the foundations of what we call apologetics in my family, where you are able to truly say, okay, this is what I would think. This is why I think it. This is what you might think, and this is why you might think it. Here's why it's not really holding as much water as you think. And in a way that is kind and respectful and persuasive. And this goes right along hand in hand with debate itself. It goes right along with reasoning, because you can't be persuasive without having a very logical argument to things. And you really can't have any of those unless you know the foundations of math, because 1 + 1 has to equal 2. It's the same difference in logic. And we have the same difference in grammar as well. There's not going to be one word that's going to be translated to mean something completely different. It's going to be one thing. And so again, we just see that overlap of each one of the strands. Debate is probably the most stressful strand. I would say, I don't know if stressful is the best word. We have team policy debate going on at the beginning of the year in the first semester. That can be intimidating. That was intimidating to me. Again, I had never seen challenge before last year, and I was kind of thrown in, and I didn't really get to see any team policy debate. And it was kind of like let me look at the forum. What do the others say? The Facebook groups were so phenomenally helpful to just really understand that, again, this is a situation of soak in the knowledge. This is a year of grammar, learning what does team policy debate look like? What is it supposed to be? How am I supposed to format it? And then coming alongside each other and working together in that. And then second semester, they step in a little bit further into that, and they learn rebuttals as well. And then what we did was, the first semester, everybody kind of knows everything that's going on. They work on their 1AC all together, so they have that information. Second semester, they have a little less information, so they're responsible for a little bit more. And this actually takes a little bit of a back seat, because we switch kind of tracks inside the actual community day where we're really talking about economics. So we have the kids who are doing the stock market venture. They're working on their cost of living project, and they're working on team policy debate. And those are kind of in the background, not completely, but somewhat in the background as you're discussing all of the information that you're working through in the penny, whatever happened to penny candy and the blue stocking guide. And it's been a very interesting process to kind of see where the kids struggle and where they succeed, and what questions they have. And they have great questions. Sometimes they have questions that you really just aren't sure how to answer. And so it's okay for you to say, I will come back to you with that answer. And just no different than it is in our Christian walk. We may not always have the answer to give to someone, but we can say, I don't have it right now, but I can absolutely get that answer for you and come back and have that conversation. That is all of the strands. I did kind of go fast. I was trying to keep within a good time, but wanted to make sure that we were taking care of that. I would say, as far as the things that are done, the other thing that I didn't mention, but it is something that they do, is the individual event. That is something that's part of the debate strand, and it is something that's done in the second semester, and they have two, and they're just memorized pieces that generally the way that I have understood from the previous directors is that they generally encourage students to do one serious one and one kind of silly one. And so we had some pretty entertaining ones this first time that they did it. It comes up at the middle of that year. Let them know, hey, you've got an individual event, which is a memorized piece. It's 3 to 5 minutes. It's going to be due on week 19. And then they will have a second one due on week 29. And that's something that some directors do encourage them to do individually. Some say you could work on it together. But the big event of the entire year is the team policy debate, which happens on week 25 for the second semester.
Awesome. You hit that really fast. Oh,
sorry.
No, that's good. I was trying to do the same thing with my part. I was like, okay, let's talk, and I got a little caffeine in me too. That kind of helps. So yeah. So
I feel that one. Yes.
I kind of became your pace horse there. I'm like, okay, this is the speed we're talking. And then you're like, you just picked right up with it. So we jive pretty well, I think. All right. Let's see. We're going to do questions in a little bit. And then Heidi, I'm going to ask you a ton of questions as I'm going through my portion, because let's see, there's the way that I used materials, but there's also the way that you probably recommend, because what you see as a director, I haven't directed Challenge 1. So, so when we're going through the catalog, and sometimes I get glitches in the program when I switch from this screen and start moving through the live catalog. So if you have your catalogs, you can just kind of look along with me.
It's page 104 if you have the physical catalog.
Yes, 104. Thank you. So if you look at page 104, I have only read a little bit of Douglas. So I'm going to start off talking about the Cultivating Christian Leaders. Anybody you guys have all been around for a pretty long time. So you know that they used to be called Parent Resources. Now they're starting to call them Cultivating Christian Leaders, because they feel like a resource could be something like, the transcript programs, things like that. They're saying this is for cultivating you as a leader in your own home and in your community. So anyway, Office of Assertion, I know a lot of people get really, really into that, but the book that I absolutely love is Total Truth. Heidi, have you read that?
I have not read that one. I have the Office of Assertion. That one was a gift from Yvette for taking on Challenge 1. So that one was really good.
Did you go through that?
Yes, the Office of Assertion. Yes.
Yeah.
What about Total Truth? Because now I feel like maybe I should get that one.
So, okay. So I have not finished Office of Assertion, but for me, so did you read Saving Leonardo? That's her other book that we have in the catalog. Okay. So from my perspective, I don't care when people read well, I guess I do care. By the time you get to challenge, I'd say challenge 3 or challenge 4, somewhere in there, I would say start with Saving Leonardo and then move on into Total Truth at some point. They're both by Nancy Pearcey, and she's not like a C.S. Lewis, because she's not she's more like the Francis Schaeffer of modern times. And she's like the foremost Christian intellectual of like our era at this point. And it doesn't hurt that she's female, because in our current climate, everybody wants to, give props to that. So, but Saving Leonardo, what it is she studied under Francis Schaeffer, and she was out of L'Abri in Switzerland. And she took Francis Schaeffer's ideas, and then she applied this. He has what's called the fact value split, which is very critical for understanding our current culture, but really almost any time period after the Middle Ages, I'd say. And she applies that to fine arts. She does it to paintings, like visual arts. She does it to theater. She does it to music, and she even does it to commercials, and helps you interpret and helps you understand the philosophy behind that. And then she takes it and when you get to Total Truth, she's talking about the history of evangelical Christianity in the United States predominantly. She also goes into Europe a little bit. That obviously impacts it. But she's saying how the philosophical movements have creeped into either Christianity or influenced Christianity, how there's been a pushback, in both directions. And these two books together, I feel like have equipped me to have discussions with my students as they get older, and they're starting to approach philosophy, and they're starting to engage with political ideas. Like I said, Saving Leonardo is a little bit more user-friendly, and there's pictures because it's talking about art, so that doesn't hurt. But Total Truth is meaty and heavy, and so you might want to save it for the summer or for when you're feeling like you're ready for some heavy lifting. But it was enormously rewarding for me. So just a plug on those two books. Have you read A Case for Classical Christian Education?
No, I have not.
Okay. That is a good one, but if you're in CC, chances are you believe in what he's saying anyway. So you could probably pass on that. All right, so moving on into So in the physical science, obviously you have to get the textbook, and you can get a used one. Just make sure you try to get the same edition, because there was a big jump in editions. Jay Wild did the older ones, which I do like him a lot, but we're using the newer editions at CC.
We have a mixed bag of that this year. We had some students with the 3rd edition and some with the 4th edition. And so there are differences actually in the text itself, as well as the experiments. So that'll make a difference for your students when they're going through the modules to try to discuss it, as well as, so each week they are doing a write-up for an experiment that generally the director has assigned, and then they will do that experiment in class and then do the formal lab report on that experiment. Well, that's going to make a difference if they have the 3rd edition or the 4th edition.
Okay, that's good to
I know some of our older families that have had books that have been passed down, that's the situation. They had the other one, and it was like, why buy a new one? So we made it work this year, and we partnered those that had 4th edition and those that had 3rd edition, and it worked out. But I could see that being something that's going to continue for the next couple of years.
Yeah, I wrote that in my catalog. I use this as these are my cliff notes. I take notes all through the director talks. It's just wonderfully helpful. And then, do you have any students that like to use the student notebook? We don't sell it at CC, but do you have any that have been using that? My daughter used to use them. So
the handbook, none of my students have used that one.
No,
And
the notebook, not the CC one, the From Apologia. Do you know what I'm talking about? It's like that.
Yes,
really
I do know what you're talking about. I have one student who uses that.
Okay.
And so there's 8 in my class. So I don't know if it necessarily helps one way or the other, but it's something that his brother did, and so it's an expectation for him as well.
Okay. We used it a little bit just because it helped me, because at that point, I had 3 little ones running around. I was going in a lot of different directions. We were also moving. And sometimes, and you'll see that, like I'll mention the Latin workspace, the same thing. Sometimes I need to be able to go to something and open it and see if something, like the on your own questions were written out, and then she would have to, and I could see, oh, she didn't answer that on your own question. Whereas when the years that we just decided to use a notebook, I would have to go check the assignment, and make sure. So that can be a cheat if somebody is juggling multiple things, or if you have a lot going on. We don't, but like I said, we don't sell that particular notebook thing. Now the Student Lab handbook, I personally think they should have that in the Challenge A level on up, because we found it very helpful for science fair. But do you
Oh,
guys not use that?
interesting. Okay. So a couple of our students actually use it, like we use it at our home. I think it was helpful for us having not really had a whole lot of experience with challenge kind of come in. We have a lot of families who have older kids though, so it's kind of like oh well, we know what we're doing because we saw it done. So I think you're going to get a mixed hat on that one.
Okay. Okay. All right, cool. Good to know. And then the science lab journal, that's basically like a quad ruled notebook would do just as well. Some people like the official stuff, and there are resources. I don't know if I have a copy with me. There are there is some resources in the back of it, but we've had it for some years, but then a lot of times we just end up using the just a quad ruled notebook. So traditional logic, you'll need the student workbook. Do you think the teacher key is important?
Sorry, couldn't. So I haven't used the teacher key. I have just kind of read along the actual student book myself and gone through it. So I can't speak to the teacher key.
Okay, so it's more like a parent. So like parents who don't want to work along with it, they probably need that to hold their kids accountable.
Yes, I would agree with that.
Do you feel like so I felt like in Challenge B, I really wanted the DVDs to understand through it. But how like the DVDs for this level, I feel like we didn't need them as much, partly because we'd done so much logic in B. I felt like the DVDs, but people who hadn't gone through B were more likely to want those.
Right. I would agree with that. And honestly, if this is the strand that you are allowing your student to do on their own, so it was suggested to me by a parent that you have 2 strands that you're all in on, 2 strands that you are partially in on, and then 2 that you allow them to do on their own. And with such a heavy hit in Challenge B for the logic, the traditional logic and the intermediate logic and all of those, like this would be an easy one where you could say, okay, this one I think you can do on your own. And just having that DVD for them to have that kind of added support is, I think, helpful. And I think that's how some of our parents used it. It was kind of like, okay, you're going to watch this teacher and this will allow me to not be as all in on this. But this was definitely so much easier to comprehend, and the book itself was just very digestible, completely digestible.
Yeah, and it's like it looks like almost like and it's very thin in comparison.
Oh, and definitely in comparison to the 2 books that we had last year. So very, very thin.
Much more approachable. And I'm just double checking something here. Why don't I see it? Oh, here it is. Yeah, and the DVD set for this level isn't nearly as much as the B. In B, those DVDs get pricey, but this one's not so bad. So anyway, that's a personal opinion. Okay, so going into when you go into Shakespeare, they're going to encounter Shakespeare quite a bit in the coming years, especially I believe it's 2. Wait, I got to go through my notes. Or maybe it's 3 that they go deep into. 3 is deep into Shakespeare. So I think by 3 they're kind of used to the language at that point, but in 1 they're still kind of getting used to it. We used the Charles and Mary Lamb, I think, earlier because we were trying to also incorporate the younger kids into what she was doing. So we used the Charles and Mary Lamb when we were trying to kind of facilitate younger kids being involved. But I don't think she did use it a little bit in Challenge 1. But I think that if she had the Folger's Guide, she said the annotations in that level were were good enough that she could have done without the Charles and Mary Lamb guide. Do you feel like there's you could go get just any copy of Taming of the Shrew. Do you feel like the Folger's Guides, do you like them, or is just a dime store copy good?
I think so. Most of our kids have got a side-by-side book. There's only 2 that have done it the way that it's suggested here in that catalog, where it's 2 separate things. And so it really is helpful in the moment if they're like, wait, what in the world? To very quickly, okay, this is what was said. Oh, okay, that makes sense now. Let me restart that line and go through it. So the side-by-sides have been the ones that I feel like that our students resonated with the most.
Okay. So you feel like that was helpful. So Okay, good to know. All right, so then we'll go through debate. So in debate, so we have the Words Aptly Spoken series for the documents. Now, in some of the levels, like for example, in Challenge A, the Words Aptly Spoken is optional, although I personally like those because they help me keep up with my students' reading. But at this level, it's really not optional unless you want to go look up each and every one of those speeches, articles, poems, etc. And I think there's additional like questions in there, isn't there?
Yes. And there was, so if you do have a situation of, I don't allow my student to write in the book because I'm going to save it for my next child that's going through, which we do have a lot of that. There is a download. And so you essentially each week there are so many that are assigned. There's one that you're supposed to be focusing on, and then you're supposed to work on the others as you have time. And so the annotation itself is actually something that one, it's fantastic to do for anyone who reads at all, for anything. And so it's a very useful tool outside of just learning this. But encouraging the students to whatever method they use to stick with it, right? Like use the same method for every single one. That is huge. And then the printout, and I'll have to see if I can find where that is, and maybe I can send it to you. And someone had it printed out, and you could choose, which ones you wanted to print out, or you could print out all of them. Which of course, I overachiever, beginning of the year, this time of the year when I was prepping myself for the next year, as I think several of you all will be directing next year Challenge 1, and you're like, I just kind of want to wrap my head around this. And so I'm like, okay, yeah, print. And it was like 300 and some odd pages. But for me as director, it was nice because I could pull out the one that I needed for class versus using that book and, okay, where is it? And then I could actually pass that to them and say, okay, look, this is where I did the work. This is how I did it. And then those who really struggled with it, because you're going to have kids who really catch on to that very quickly, and you're going to have some that struggle with it. And so for the ones that struggled with it, they're like, oh, okay, that makes sense. It's not that hard. It's not that difficult, but there's tremendous benefit in doing it.
Okay. Now my daughter actually, she still, because we went ahead, and this is when I was my early book repping years, and so I used to get to keep the beat up copies, which was really helpful. And that's actually what kind of won me on this series, because she started, this is when she did annotating in the Defeating Darwinism, and I made her do it in like her literature for Challenge A and B. But I think when she got into annotating this is when she really started to see the value of annotating. And I'd say, and then she started doing it far more heavily into her literature. Now I can't pull a book off her shelf that she's actually, I can tell immediately whether she's read a book, because she can't read without a pencil in her hand. So she really made this her own. So we don't have a copy for my boys. We'll have to get a new one when they come up through. But just the, and then also it has like intros into the different pieces, like giving a background of Alexander Hamilton, stuff like that. And then there are two, for this level, there's two of them. Now this one, so this material is really not optional unless you want to go do all the work of finding that stuff. But this one is optional. And this is basically so that you can keep up with the literature that your student is learning. And I'll give you a little cheat. If you go into the digital catalog, you can, and you kind of hover over, and I can't show that live like I'd like to, but if you hover over the catalog, say for example, let me turn to the next page, like Sign of the Beaver. If you hover over certain ones, they'll take you to a YouTube video of where Lee Borton's it's her Words Aptly Spoken YouTube series, where she does like a 45-minute discussion with some other classical leaders, and she kind of gives you like the cliff notes into each book. She does that also for like Saving Leonardo and Total Truth. She does that to a lot of our Cultivating Christian Leaders stuff. So you can kind of get like a cheat sheet on what to talk to your kids about. Because I mean, it is called Classical Conversations, and I find that if I haven't had a discussion over the literature with one of my students over something, then what was I mean, it still had value, but the real meat of the curriculum is in the discussions, but it's hard to have discussions. Even if I've read some of these, like I read Sign of the Beaver when I was a kid, but when I wanted to go back through it, I didn't necessarily have time to read the book with him. And I didn't remember, I kind of remembered that he was like a boy in the woods with some Native Americans, but I couldn't remember what was going on. And so these Words Aptly Spoken give you the cliff notes of what's going on, and they give you discussion questions, review questions, but just like flipping through which of Blackbird Pond, which is one of the literature that you have in Challenge 1. For example, they'll have questions like, what does Uncle Matthew's reaction to the gifts suggest about his beliefs? Now, I'm not necessarily thinking of what exactly that's referring to, but if my students have just read that, I could sit there and say, okay, what is it talking about with gifts? What gifts are they talking about? And they'd say, oh, well, in the book, this and this and this happens. And I'd say, well, what is it getting at? What is it that he believes? And I can use these questions to kind of launch into a conversation, but I'd really be up a creek if I was trying to talk to my students. So without having some additional resource. So in the high school years for Reagan, when I was so busy, we would throw one of these up on the dashboard. It just lived on our dashboard. Right now we have the Challenge A copy of version of Words Aptly Spoken. It just lives on our dashboard. And when we're driving somewhere, I pull it down, I open it up to our current book, and we just have a discussion. We call it car schooling. So anyway, this isn't required, but I did want to say I found it really is a good supplement to the curriculum.
I would say as a director, it's definitely very helpful as well. And if you're having trouble finding those links, if you go into your CC Connected, you go to the forum, you can find those on there. All of those book clubs links are in the forum. And so like, just for example, what I did was I went in to Challenge 1, and then I put the filter of exposition on. And when you put that filter of exposition on there, you can pull, it says Lee's Book Club, and then it has a bunch of links that it has there, week 1, week 3, week 5. So not every single book, but a lot of them have been discussed, and those have been tremendous for me as a director.
And there's like 90 of them.
Yeah,
she's like discussed 90 books at this point. It's crazy. I wish I had that kind of thing to my credit. All right, I'll run through a few more things and then we'll go to parent questions. So I'll just explain what the workspaces are for people who don't know. You don't need to use these. They didn't even exist when we first started going through Challenge A. What they are is it just takes the assignments and it puts it into a format. Almost, I hate saying workbook, but it kind of is like a workbook. So like it has, when it says copy your charts from the book, instead of doing it in a notebook, it has it filled out here. Now, I like the whole stick in the sand approach. Notebook and pencil is all we need, along with a book to help us go through it. And then, but what happens when I get going in 100 directions is it's kind of like that student notebook for Apologia. If I'm not paying attention and I'm not consistently checking his work, all of a sudden he could have gone weeks and I didn't necessarily know that he was skipping some of his exercises. And so with this, I'm going to use, next year we're going to have a Challenge A and a Challenge B going through, and I really am just going to have too much on my plate. So then I'll get these so I can just walk up, open it up, see if it's done or not, instead of checking the guide, checking the notebook, and correlating the two. So this is like a time saver, but it's not required. It just kind of helps you to keep them accountable. Because a saying I like is don't expect what you won't inspect. And this helps me inspect their work. Aside from that, the Copper Lodge versions, basically just the difference between a Copper Lodge version of a book and whenever you just go to like half price books or whatnot, is that there are additional annotations, things like that. So I think I would recommend going, and I would talk around with some other parents and see which ones they thought the Copper Lodge were really helpful. Have you used any of those, Heidi?
We do have a few of them. We ended up getting our books from someone else, or the majority of them from someone else. So we have like kind of a mixed bag. Some of them are the Copper Lodge, some of them are not. And I don't physically open the books and read them. I listen to them on audiobook. And so that's how I go through them, because I'm mom and I wear a lot of hats. And so it's
Mhm.
much easier to put that audiobook on while I'm cleaning or doing dishes or driving. And then my daughter, she's marking those books up. And I
Mhm.
don't know that if she said that one is better than another.
Okay. So like with the Copper Lodge, so a full disclosure, the Copper Lodge are not when you buy a Copper Lodge, at least the way I feel, I haven't, maybe I'll get better about this. We'll see. But when I buy the Copper Lodge are more expensive than your typical, paperback. And so I am less likely to feel comfortable handing that to my son to mark up, because with Reagan, she got her own copy of everything and it became hers because she completely marked them up. It became like a journal or a thought diary to her. And I want my sons to do that as well. But if I have to shell out, a full price for a nice copy with each son, I think I would rather to have everybody go get a 50-cent copy from a garage sale and make sure that their kids are writing in them like crazy than for people to go buy the nice Copper Lodge, but then kind of want to baby it. Do you know what I'm saying? So I really think with the literature, you really got to weigh the pros and cons of that. The Copper Lodge copies are nice and all that, maybe for like family library or for mom or the director to use, but you want to make sure what you have, you feel comfortable with your students writing in. So just be aware of that. Aside from that, that's the main thing I have about the content. Everything else is pretty self-explanatory. I generally like trivium tables, but they are like debate. I really like the debate. The reasoning, is it the logic trivium tables to use successively over the years. I would say you want to have that probably by challenge 2 or 3 or 4, but what year you pick those up is kind of up to you. I found that the logic trivium table and the debate one helped me as a parent kind of keep track of what my student was learning, because it was like my Cliff Notes. But they are optional. So, all right, with that, if we have anybody with questions, I know we covered a lot of stuff. Does anybody have any questions about all these things? Oh, and I should explain this discount code. Anytime you're on a book rep call, I will have a discount code available, and that is used for $10 off if you have one of those parent resources or Cultivating Christian Leaders books in your cart. It'll give you $10 off, and that expires March 31st. So you can just screenshot that for later if you want. Does somebody have a question, Sandra? Is that you?
Oh, yes. I have a few. So because you guys were just talking about, well, first of all, let me say, here, I'll take my camera off. Thank you guys so much for doing this, because it was really helpful. It was super, it was fast, but it's like drinking from a fire hydrant, it's just so much information, but it was really great. And I really needed this more than I realized. I was going to do just a shameless plug on the Copper Lodge books.
Okay.
I agree that, they're a little bit more expensive, and but what I really love about this, and I try to encourage other families that it's worth it, because, they do these like extra little notes at the bottom. Should I
Okay.
hold that up? So that
Yeah.
you can
No, that's good.
see pronunciation for some of
Okay.
the words, and it's like all the little notes that they add in there it's so helpful. And then all of the drawings, my boys love it. It just gives like a little
Yeah.
bit more to the book.
Mhm.
And yeah, I just wanted to add that. I love the Copper Lodge.
Okay. Well, good to
Um,
know. I like to hear feedback like that. I always feel
um,
about, as a book rep, everybody thinks, well, you're just saying that because you're the book rep. And I'm like, well, I don't, I want to know what people really like. So I appreciate that.
yeah. One of the downsides of the Copper Lodge books is the paper. When
Okay.
you have to
'Cause it's
find like,
glossier, isn't it?
it is glossy, yeah. And so if you guys are like pen snobs like I am,
Mhm.
you have to, like, I love
Mirrors.
office supplies, and you have to find
Mhm.
like the right one. It's kind of like finding the best pen for your Bible that doesn't bleed through,
Mhm.
or the highlighters or whatever. You have to find what works.
Mhm.
But yeah, these yeah, that is a downside because you have to not use gel ink, especially because it'll smear.
Yeah. I feel like the cheapos, like the super cheapo Bic ones seem to work better on that gloss. Is that what you find, or what do you use on glossy
Yeah,
paper? Like
yeah, Bic ones or Le Pen.
oh, I'm gonna screenshot that. I hadn't heard of those, or let me just write it down here. Le Pen, okay. You get those
These
on
also work
Amazon?
great in some Bible. Yeah, from Amazon.
Okay.
And then I haven't tried them yet, but I always use like the microns.
Uh-huh.
But I like these because they write so small, and you know, when you're not given a lot of space, they work. But I
Yeah.
honestly, I haven't tried it in the Copper Lodge books.
Oh, I should get those other ones for my daughter because she runs out of space a lot. She can't stop writing in her books now. So
Yeah.
she'll even have me actually, seriously, last night she called me. I'm trying to remember. Oh, she wanted Hobbes Leviathan. She's like, get my red Hobbes Leviathan on the shelf and go to blah, blah, blah spot and read to me what I wrote. Because I had some thoughts about it. I couldn't find the book. And she was really upset because it was so important to her. Like that's how important it's become in her education. Like she can almost tell me where on the page it's going to be, you know, but it's annotating's been a very big thing for her. It helps her a lot. So
yeah, and I think making the connection for our kids, for the students, to be able to understand like how to do that in your Bible. I'm having a hard time. My Bible is literally hanging on by a thread. There is one
I don't want to get
thread.
rid of it. Yeah.
And I don't want to switch because it's got all of my notes in there. But you know, it's so good for kids to see, like, write in the book. I will buy another book. It is okay if that's what helps you to like really process it and get the most out of it that you can, then do it. I'm all for it.
Awesome.
Yeah. Okay. So I just had a few questions. So first, can we share or have a copy of this recorded thing, because there was at least one other Challenge B mom who couldn't make it today from our community?
This one is currently being recorded. It's working. I had another recording that didn't work. So it should be all right. It's going to take me a bit to process because I think I have at least 8, maybe 10 of these recordings that I have to go through and edit and such. So hopefully sometime in March, I'll have those done.
Okay.
And then I'll send them out.
Okay. And then to clarify, is it the 4th edition Apologia that is used, or
Yeah, so that's what it is in the catalog for this coming year. I think they did not put out the 4th edition in time for it to be like the required version, but they did have here's the difference they put out. So Apologia was fantastic about it. They put out a sheet that said here's the differences in the experiments in 3 and 4, and they gave you all of those resources so that your students, you wouldn't really see that issue. But that the 4th edition is what is in our catalog this year.
And we were having trouble a few years ago or actually it was last year, is because if somebody ordered off Apologia's website or our website, they should have been getting the 4th edition. That's what they were supposed to get. But so often they would, like, if you ordered from, I think it was Christian Book and Rainbow Resources, we were having, they'd be like, wait, they said the 4th edition, and then they actually looked, and so then people were wanting to return things to us, and we're like, no, we can't have our 3rd editions. We can't have 3rd editions getting mixed in. So, but yeah, it should all be 100 from our bookstore. It's 100% 4th editions, and if you order from Apologia, it's 4th edition. So.
Okay. And then what was the side-by-side Shakespeare? Heidi, you were saying like you like the side-by-side.
Yeah, let me it's not down here. Let me have my daughter bring it down to me and I will tell you exactly what it is.
Okay. Should I go to the next question?
I have a copy of it right here.
I have a copy of it.
Oh, do you?
Yeah. If it's the one I'm thinking of, let me get my camera back on.
Okay. All right. Yeah. So sometimes you can find books that have that. I think the Folgers ones don't have that. They have annotations like what Copper Lodge has. But then, so that does that have the Mary Charles and Mary Lamb copy in it? Is that what that is?
This is the Folgers one. We have the Charles and Mary Lamb as well.
Oh, okay. So that's the older Folgers then. Okay. And I don't know why they didn't put it in my sample set. And my daughter, she ended up going crazy for the Folgers copies. And she has, in addition to all the CC ones, I think there's something like 20 something on her. I have a picture. Sometimes I show it to people, but it goes all the way across. So she really likes those Folgers guides. But that must be an older edition because it doesn't have the rainbow cover. Because usually the Folgers have the the bright, colorful cover with the scrolly writing on the front.
This is the version that we found. It's the No Fear Shakespeare. And it says Spark Notes, which I just realized. I had no clue that it was done by them. But when you open it up, it's literally this side is the Shakespeare's version, and this side is the translation.
Okay, and you said No Fear Shakespeare?
Yes.
Okay. Now, do you find, I've had other directors say different things, so I'm just wondering your take on it. I've had some directors that really want everybody to have the same book, so that people can say on page 45. Like if they're flipping through really fast, does that bother you? Or are you able to follow line, if you could say line 500 or something like that?
In my opinion, with the crew that I have, it forces them to pay attention better. Because if they're relying on someone saying, oh, line whatever, then they can quickly find it and not have been paying attention. And so we have 3 different types of books. So it's either this one. So there's 3 kids who have this one. There are 3 kids who have the one that's actually in the catalog. And then there are 2 that have a different one. So to me, and then actually mine is a different one than all of them, because mine is actually different than even this No Fear Shakespeare one. But to me, it just depends on your students too. You have to kind of get a feel for who your kids are and how they're going to do best. And sometimes it's nice to keep them on their toes because they have to be following along. They can't rely on someone saying, oh, line such and such.
Yeah, so it kind of depends on how, like classroom management, like how you handle things, whether efficiency is your thing or accountability is your thing, or so it's like figuring out your own needs for how to run things. Okay, cool. All right.
Thank you guys for that.
Yeah.
And then I just have a couple more. So could you clarify, Heidi, I think it was you were saying that you can do the download of the Words Aptly Spoken if you're directing.
And I'll have to look back and see where I found that. So when I first got access to Challenge 1, I kind of went through and printed everything that I thought I needed to print. And so I feel like that means that had to be on CC Connected, because I don't think I would have printed something from like a Facebook group. But if you want, maybe you can put your email in the chat and then I can find that and send that to you, because I'm sure I have it downloaded on my laptop or something of that nature.
Okay, that'd be helpful. Thank you.
Yeah.
And then my last question is just the so in the catalog, and I don't know if they come out with a 2025.
Yeah, the new one, they're very similar, but the new one looks like this. It has 2 girls.
Okay. I just am looking on the 24 one, but it has the expo books that are check with the director. And
you're talking about the director. Yeah.
If I'm the director, I don't know what to tell them. Like, am I telling them to get all of it or?
You are telling them which book you're going to read. So the choices are The Sign of the Beaver or Witch at Blackbird Pond. You choose. Like we chose to read The Witch at Blackbird Pond. And then it was An Old-Fashioned Girl or Tom Sawyer. And so I chose Tom Sawyer. We chose the girl book in the first one. We chose the boy book for the second one. So it's a director's choice of the book. And then the other choice is reading the Starship Troopers or watching a Star Wars movie. I chose we read the book. And then I said, let's go and meet and watch the movie too. So that one's an outside of the classroom type of situation where we're going to get together and watch that movie. So that one is definitely a director's choice. And the reality is that you get to choose, and your students are going to come along with you on that one, and they're going to have opinions, and that's okay. They can have their opinions, but at the end of the day, you're the director of the class. Just remember that.
Okay. So where there are two books side by side, it's a choice.
Are you talking about when you're looking at the catalog?
Yeah.
No. So, good question.
Some of them are choices, some aren't.
Yes, right. So The Sign of the Beaver and The Witch of Blackbird Pond, that's one of your choices. That's like the first book that you're choosing. So you're going to want to choose that when you're bringing your families in. You're going to let them know, okay, hey, this is the book that we're choosing. And then same thing with, I'm pretty sure it's Tom Sawyer, An Old-Fashioned Girl, and then Starship Troopers and the movie. Those are the three director choice options. And then you're going to want to know which ones you want your class to read when you're letting families kind of come into your class. So that way, when they're purchasing their books, they can purchase the correct books.
Okay. That's helpful. Thank you. And then with those books, the Challenge One director last year did like a summer reading program for those other books that were, I guess, optional. Have you done that, Heidi, or would you recommend that?
We did not, but there were a few kids who wanted to read the other book, and they did read it, and they had a conversation at lunchtime about it versus during the actual community seminar portion.
Okay. Okay, I'll let somebody else ask questions. Sorry for
I do
taking
wanna
up all
say
that time.
something- I do want to say something about Starship Troopers, and just because like this call is being recorded and I want to make sure I hit everybody on this. Reading the book and watching the movie Starship Troopers are not the same thing. That like Starship Troopers, the movie does not follow the plot of the book. It is totally, and it's not really child appropriate or student appropriate. So just because we've had that mistake I've heard about people having made that mistake, or people have seen the movie and they're like, why are we reading that book? The book is completely different than the movie that came out like in 2000. I don't know when it came out, 2006 or something like that. So just to clarify for everybody, do not watch the movie. So,
gotcha.
Yeah, and my daughter did really, she kind of had a negative view of the military in certain ways, or some misconceptions about the military, and she felt like reading this book gave her a very different perspective on it. So yeah, so plug for that. I haven't read it though myself. I should probably see if there's a Words Aptly Spoken video on it now. There didn't used to be, but all right. Does anybody else have any more questions? All right. Well, I'm going to run through my credits. If anybody just if this is good for you, you can go ahead and sign off. I won't be offended. But I'm just going to kind of run through my last little bit of announcements. So the only upcoming February frenzies we have left are in about another hour and a half. We're going to do the Foundations Level 1. That one we are going to record and definitely distribute that one. So if there's anyone you want to see in community with you, this is a good one to pass around. And then we'll do an Essentials one on Wednesday. And then we've basically wrapped up all the rest of these. So like I said, we should have a recording of them, hopefully to distribute in March. And then the Math Map at Home events, those will be going on through mostly through the spring. We'll take a break during the summer for parent practicums, and then going into fall, we'll we'll kick up, well, I shouldn't say fall, late summer, we'll kick up a bunch just to make sure everybody feels comfortable with how the materials work. Because it isn't something that you can just open up and know what to do. And when you download the free materials that are online, they really don't make sense if you're just seeing it there without the full retinue of resources. I'm going to check my chat really quick. Let's see. Let me know how to access some other recordings in March. So all the recordings should go out through the local representatives, your LRs. So that would be like Kendra or Troy or Yvette. They should be distributing them. It's probably through what's called a Samora. It'll probably look like a newsletter, I'm guessing. And then I'll also be putting those on the social media pages. So that's where you'll find that. And then Sandra, did you have another question?
Yeah, sorry.
No, that's all right.
You had made the comment about the movie, which I appreciate the warning, because that would be terrible if you're like having everybody over and you find out this is not appropriate. But along the same lines, there was one family who is just kind of on the fence for next year, and they might be concerned about the content in. I don't know if it's Taming of the Shrew or
it would probably be Taming of the Shrew.
Scarlet. Yeah.
And the Scarlet Letter too. Yeah, those are the two ones that kind of get people up in arms. Okay, so the reality is that we are talking about discipline and freedom. And so we are going to apply that the same way as we always do to our Christian walk, right? And so our kids in 9th grade need to start having those conversations on what a role of a husband, what a role of a wife should be, and the consequences that come when you don't actually honor those the way that God has asked you to honor them. The book produced some incredible insights and some incredible conversations. And the reality is if the parent doesn't want the child to participate, you can honor that by allowing them to step out of the room during that strand. So if that is an absolute, like they're not okay with it, you can honor that by allowing them to step out of the room and during that strand. But I would encourage your parents just to go ahead and have that pre-conversation with them, read the book along with their student, have those conversations beforehand, and then say, okay, hey, look, these questions are fine for you to have in class. These questions are fine for you to discuss in class. These are the topics that, we really want to put a hard no on. And then Taming of the Shrew, the issue is, I think, where people don't like, so there's a list. If you look at the forum on CC Connected, there's a list of acts and scenes that you can find that have a kind of a prelude to parents. Hey, parents, this is what's coming up. This is the content that your child is going to hear. This is the content that your child is going to see. These are the conversations that you can have. So, for example, there's drunkenness in the introduction. There is a man dressed as a woman in the introduction. He's trying to trick someone. There is some kind of tongue-in-cheek kind of language in the Shakespeare, and there is debate on what it means. And the reality is that it can be construed however you desire to construe it. But we should encourage our students and encourage our parents that everything should be honoring to God. So if what you're about to say is not going to be honoring to God, then maybe you shouldn't be saying it as far as our students go. And if they say something that isn't honoring to God, we provide them grace and respect in just kind of redirecting the conversation. That is a great question to ask your parent, not for discussion here in this class. And those are the ways that we can handle it. And that's the way we have handled it in our classroom. And I pre-read what we're going to read in class because you are reading this out loud, kind of drama style, right? That's the whole point of it in class. And so I pre-read it and just kind of remind parents because they have a tendency to forget that, oh, that's right. This is the book that they were talking about. This is the information that they were talking about that's coming up. And so that way it just kind of gives them the opportunity to have those conversations with their students as they're reading through that week as well.
And those are on CC Connected. They're called Shakespeare Spotlights. So where they do run through them. Also, what I did was I we watched the Elizabeth Taylor version because I guess it's very spot on to the actual script. So we watched the Elizabeth Taylor version, like my husband and I, to kind of preview it and be like, okay, what's going on? What's all the buzz about? And then that kind of gave us, because our kids are exposed to this stuff. I mean, we're not, and I'd rather that they talk about it with us and that we have these conversations, and that they also have, like, that my director is also modeling how to handle when you run into this stuff in an appropriate manner, and to see we can be responsible and respectful how we go through this in class versus the way you would find it if somebody was like joking about it on the playground kind of thing. So it is this like idea of how do we take what is real in the world and handle it with a Christian worldview. So, and doing that in community, I think with a good, responsible director like Heidi, of course, I think it does wonders. It like leads to great discussions and it blesses them, even though it's not perfect.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate it so much.
Yep. Thanks for your question, because that's the kind of stuff we need. Like that's what other people are wondering. So when you ask these questions, somebody else on the call, when we record this and you spread this around, somebody else is going to wonder about it too. And what was the other book that you said that other people, Heidi?
The Scarlet Letter.
Now, why about that one? When you said
because
that's
it's about adultery. The issue is that it's about adultery. But it really is such a great book.
It is phenomenal.
But the reality is okay. So a lot of the books are about war and death, and let me see. I think it's the Red Badge of Courage.
Yeah, I was actually expecting somebody to say something about that one, but
that one to me is I would say it's probably lesser known on what the topic is or what the subject matter is. And so it's easy to pull out that Scarlet Letter one, because most people, especially if they've had a public school education, that's one of the books that you read in public school in your English classes. So they have a little bit of familiarity with it. And it's something that's commonly understood as a sign for adultery. But I would say that those two are the ones that we get the biggest backlash with. But I'll tell you that Through the Gates of Splendor is graphic as well. And if you watch the movie, it's quite graphic as well. We did have the kids who wanted to, that we went and watched that. Again, that Billy Budd, The Sailor and Other Stories, that one is kind of on the graphic side. Let me see.
But this is talking about kids that are 14, 15. And
exactly.
So and this is something too that when people are like, well, you read the book, why not let your kids see the movie? And there is something about reading. When you read about something, like, for example, Lord of the Rings, we read the whole Lord of the Rings series. Like, we would read it to our 7-year-old, all the way through all of them. And it's fine. But I would not let them watch the movies, because there is a certain, and same thing with like, now Hunger Games, I would not let my 7-year-old read Hunger Games, but maybe like, a 16-year-old can read Hunger Games. But seeing the images that are in a movie is different, because your imagination can only take you to what you know. And so if you've never seen, like Red Badge of Courage, if you've never seen a war scene, you can only say, oh my goodness, I bet you that was terrible. And you can empathize with it, but it's not the same as seeing a bloody battlefield, on a TV screen. So when you're reading in a book, there's a limitation that the child's imagination can withhold. So as parents, when we read it, our imagination can go way further and see something, or we hear adultery, and there's different things for us than what a student at this age, their maturity level their experience level can only take them so far.
Yeah.
And so we need to not read into adult stuff into what their imagination will see, if that makes sense.
Right.
Okay. All right. I'll go ahead and go through the rest of these really quick slides. So parent practicums, make sure you sign up for those. These are all clickable links. So you can sign up to those. We are doing math again this year. There's a lot of people who are like, why are we doing math 2 years in a row? And I think you'll notice if you start poking around at other classical programs, you'll see, for example, we just picked up for Challenge 4, our new math book that we switched out from Saxon there. It's Calculus for Everyone, which is actually a physics book, not a calculus book. but when you'll see that in the classical world, there is sort of a buzz about, okay, why have we not kind of reclaimed science? Like science has kind of been hijacked from, it used to be a Christian topic, a Christian worldview. If you look at the famous scientists of history, they were generally people who believed in either a God, but most of them, the God. And somehow that's been hijacked in the past 100 years. And the way for us to reclaim that is starting to bring back the language of science is math. And so bringing that back under, like this is adding a Christian worldview to math in the sciences is very much on the hearts and minds of classical educators of this generation, of the past 10 years, I'd say. And so we are doing another thing about math, partly because last year was so focused on math, and there was a lot of buzz and a lot of confusion about that, but we are hitting it again from just a different perspective this year. So anyway, so that's the links to those. Like I said, the social media pages, these are where I put sale prices on here. I put upcoming, there will be a math map sale, but I don't know the dates, and I won't know the dates until right before it happens. And so it's from what I understand, it's going to be a decent sale, like 25% off. So when I get dates for sales, I put them on these social media pages. But additionally, the more activity that are on these social media pages, it prompts the algorithm, both on Facebook and Instagram, to see, okay, somebody just typed homeschool in the Instagram search bar. Should I send, the algorithm will say, should I send it to K-12, which is basically a public school online program, or should I send it to these classical Christian programs, either whether it's CC or Cersei Institute or any of these things. So the more activity is on these type of pages versus these public school things, the more likely it is that it's going to send people to us instead of someplace else. So anyway, even if you don't need to necessarily see all our sales and all that, just you guys liking or following does really help. It is an outreach thing. Additionally, I try to put things that are encouraging and relevant to what's going on in the communities. The directors do call me. The LRs call me and let me know like different things. I'm sitting in on a lot of director calls. So for example, in the fall, there was a lot of buzz about why are we memorizing Greek, Roman gods? Like, why are we learning about paganism? Things like that. And so I can put things on social media that address that, like brought them to podcasts that are very inspiring and bring a Christian worldview to why you would study these things. So it just helps me be like another source for people so that the directors aren't getting such a heavy load, if that makes sense. Because the directors can't address every question. And sometimes, honestly, people come to the book rep. I don't know why, but some of the other book reps joke that, yeah, you're partly talking about books, but you're also sometimes your people's homeschooling mental therapist. So I try to be relevant on that. So anyway, make sure you link your your CC Connected page to your bookstore page so you get the full discounts, because the prices will be rising for people who aren't in a community, but they will be staying the same if you are in a community. And the only way that the bookstore knows that you are in a community is if you link those two accounts. Also, free shipping will be lowered to being $50 for free shipping instead of $250 for free shipping if you're in a CC community. We can't quite compete with Amazon because we don't hire robots. We hire homeschoolers and homeschool moms like me. So we can't do the free shipping completely on, and we can't do overnight shipping. Your packages may take a little bit longer than Amazon, but we are trying to support other homeschoolers that are doing this. So if anybody has any further questions, I'm always reachable. I don't answer my email every day. In my slow season, I probably only check it once or twice a week, but you can always text me. I don't often answer my phone if I don't recognize the number, but you can shoot me a text. I'm happy to get back with you as soon as I'm, once my kids are settled and everything. And then on behalf of the bookstore, I want to thank you. I know that you guys, on a lot of these materials, it is easy to go to half price books, but when you choose to purchase like a Copper Lodge and things like that, it does bless the people who work for the bookstore. I hope it blesses you guys as well, but it is also supporting an organization that is supporting other homeschoolers. So if anybody has any, you can also book a time with me if you have further questions, or if you need like a bookstore event at your community, things like that, you can reach out to me anytime. So with that, I really appreciate your helping me with all this, Heidi. You did an excellent job, and man, you really covered a lot of content fast. So I really appreciate that.
You're very welcome. Thank you so much for asking me to do that.
Yeah, it's somehow it nourishes my soul to be able to express, you know, it is that poetic stage. And I don't know if you feel that when you get to talk about what you do, it sort of
Yes.
enlivens how much you love it. So
Yes, it's a definite reminder to your own self.
Excellent. All right. Well, with that, I'm going to go ahead and sign off. I got to get ready for the next meeting. Like I said, it's going to be in about an hour here. So thank you for everybody being on the call and for participating. So I hope you all have a good evening and go take care of your families. So
Bye. Thank you.
all right. Yep. Thank you.
you.
Mhm.